is Mary Baca with Remotely Unique, and I have a very special guest today in the studio. I have Sergeant Michael Hernandez and his K9 SJEF, who's retired now, and we're going to talk about all of that as well. So one of the things I wanted to ask you, Michael, is what made you, well, how long have you been a K9 officer, and what made you want to do that?
So I've been a K9 officer for 10 years. Prior to that, I'm originally from Oakland, California. Right out of high school, I joined the military. So I was stationed down here. I was a security forces, which is basically a military police in the Air Force. Mm-hmm. After I got done with that for 4 years, I joined the APD in 2005.
So you've been with APD the whole time of
Yes,
your law enforcement career outside of?
Yes, I just hit 16 years.
Oh, wow. And have you always had SJEF, or did you have other dogs? Were you a handler for other dogs? Or?
So when I joined the unit, I had a previous dog. His name was Barco. He was a black Malinois. Mm-hmm. I had him for about 2 years when he got an injury while working, and so I had to retire him. Wow. So I ran him for about 2 years, and then in 2013, I went and got SJEF, and I've been with SJEF ever since.
And when you retire a dog, does the handler have an opportunity to adopt them, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we basically take responsibility of the police service dog, and we basically get it donated to us from the city of Albuquerque, and then of course we take full responsibility of him, liability-wise and all that.
Yeah, because I imagine it would be hard for him to get used to somebody else. I mean, I know they do that.
Depends on the dog.
Uh-huh.
You know, every dog is different. You know, some dogs are more social than others. With my first dog, Barco, him and SJEF got along. He was basically my son's dog. Slept with my son. He was good.
You know, the cool thing is, they are just like dogs, but then when they're on, they're on.
Yes.
You know, they're just like a police officer. You know?
Yeah, so at home, the dogs, we generally try not to overwork them, because with our line of work, at any time they're called out. Mm-hmm. So we generally try just to kind of relax and be at home. And so when they're at home, they're just relaxing.
How long has SJEF been retired?
So he's been retired about a month.
Oh, newly.
So yes, newly. So.
And he retired because? Were you retiring because?
Well, he retired because of age, and then also he has a lot of arthritis in his back that's caused him to slow down. Mm-hmm. He will still do the work, but towards the end of their career, we try to give them a good life. They put in a lot of work for the department, so I think it was the best time for him to retire. And plus, I'm a supervisor now, so he gets less work now than he would as when I was just an officer.
Oh, okay. So do you have him with you still all the time, or not?
No, so he's at home. So he's just a house.
Enjoying life, yeah.
Yeah. So you know. every time I go to work, he tries to go toward the front door, and I tell him, no, you're not going to work. So go back to your bed and watch TV and hang out with my son and daughter. So.
Uh-huh. So loyal, huh? These dogs
yes.
are. What's the training? You know, part of why I wanted to have you come on the show is, one, I like to draw positive attention to law enforcement as much as possible.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm not telling you anything you don't know and experience is the attitude toward law enforcement has changed a lot. And last year in 2019, I actually was part of a Back the Blue rally, and for the first time ever, we had to actually not announce when we were going to do the rally till 3 days before. Yeah. Because we were afraid that the wrong people were going to show up, you know. But that, you know, and then a lot of people don't know what K9s do, and they don't realize the extensive training that goes into helping the dog become, you know, a professional, really. I mean, so talk about that. What is the training, and how do you determine, if a dog's going to be a bomb detection dog versus, and what are some of the other kinds?
So for us, I'm part of the K9 unit, and our K9 unit with Albuquerque Police Department is really unique. We're one of the only departments that are tied to just the SWAT team. So basically, we are SWAT officers with the dog.
Oh, okay.
In order to be a K9 handler, you have to do everything that a SWAT operator does. It's just that our specialty is a dog. Oh. It's pretty unique. There's only a few of them around the country that actually do that. A lot of them are just patrol dogs. So with my police service dog, he's only trained for single purpose. And what that means is he's only an apprehension dog. So it's kind of unique with our department is, in the majority of our police working dogs, either through narcotics or the bomb unit or explosive ordnance disposal, they're just single purpose, or they're just detection. A lot of departments don't have that ability where they have to cross, they have to make them dual purpose, meaning that they have to do detection work and they also have to do apprehension work. So of course, with that also takes, but we specialize in apprehension. So anytime a suspect flees or we're on a SWAT activation, we're gonna be out there with our police service dog. So it takes a lot. So generally what our training consists of is we have a vendor. Horse International is one of the biggest vendors across the country. It's out located in Riverside, California. So that's where we go and do our 6-week basic handler training. So once you get to the unit, you go over there. We've been purchasing dogs from them for, I would probably say, since the late 80s, early 90s as our department. So we have a great bond. They know the type of work that we do. And the owner, Mike Reber, and Dave Reber. Mike is his son, who runs it, and what he does is he goes to Europe, travels to Europe, purchases the dogs from Europe, and then imports them back. And then, of course, for the selection that we do in the other countries, the other departments, he basically selects them. So there's a big process on, which dogs are selected. He gives us generally like a selection of saying, hey, these are 5 dogs that I think would really work for you guys. Test them out, and then of course we test them out. We put them through any sort of environmental obstacles, put them under gunfire, we put them in the dark. Of course, we give them the pursuit stuff where they're out to go with the bite suit. So there's a lot of stuff that we do to test these dogs to make sure.
Before you even train them?
Before, yes.
Just to even see if you're gonna take them?
Yes, and so that's the thing is, with dog selection is very key, because there's certain aspects that you have to try to get, well, one, for the dog, but then also for the handler. The biggest thing is not trying to match the dog with the handler, because every dog has different personalities and every handler's different personalities. So we need to be able to match the dog to the handler personality-wise to make them a successful team.
And how do you do that? Like, how do you make sure that they're compatible?
So a lot of times it's the bond that you see. It's hard to describe, but when you have the dog and you're testing them, like when I tested Chef, I knew right away. I grabbed that leash, we bonded right away. But then of course there's times when we test other dogs, and then you just kind of know as a handler, is you feel like, okay, this is my dog, and then that bond starts. And that's the biggest thing through dog training is initially getting that bond, is him trusting you that you are his dad. And you're going to protect him, and you're going to put him in positions that he's successful. And then, of course, for the dog, everything has to be positive, right? That to be in dog training, one of the key things is putting these dogs in different environmentals where they might face. So the more environmental stuff that they face, or scenarios they face, the easier it is when they are put in that situation to kind of go back and say, okay, I think I've been here before.
Well, it's like you guys, right?
Yes.
When you go through your police training, or military training, that's what it is, right? Is being in all kinds of situations that you're gonna encounter on the street and making sure that you can handle that.
Yeah,
And
and
so,
just everything reverts back to training. That's why it's key. And K9 handlers, we put work in. With mine, he's at the time when he was in service with me, he was around me more than my kids.
yeah.
Every time I was in the police car, he was with me. Every day we did something. If it was just conditioning, toy work, obedience. Because with dogs, you have to remember is you give them an inch, they take a foot, just like anything else, right? So you have to keep them up on the type of training and activity work, so that if they are put out there, that one, they're conditioned and then they're obedient. And then you tell them, or you, when you put in a situation that you know that, I have to have them search this area and I tell them to do something, they're gonna do it.
Yeah, like you have to be sure of that.
Yes,
It's like having a partner,
yes,
that you have to be sure what you can expect from each other.
yes.
Yeah.
And so it just takes a long time, a lot of hard, dedicated work. I think a lot of times, from the civilian side is, a lot of times they think that, it's just any police dog can just be any dog.
Right.
A lot of questions are being asked, well, can't you go down and select
Go to the
different
rescue.
rescue, and it's no, because you have to remember, genetically they have to be able to do certain things, right? It's for our line of work, they have to not be afraid to go in the dark. They have to not be afraid to be away from you, and then also they have to come back to you. And then of course they have to be where they're in a drive where one is, you know, they respect the suspect to the point of they know that that suspect could in fact hurt them. So they have to be quite in the drive when you deploy them to know that, hey, you know, I do have to locate this person, and at the same time have that respect where they know at any time that, you know, they could get hurt.
Yeah.
So that's
Now, and they don't wear bulletproof vests, do they?
no.
Yeah.
So the one thing is with
I mean,
dogs.
can they? Or
They
that's
can,
just
but
against
they
regulation?
well, they can't, but so dogs don't sweat, right? They don't have the tear glands. So that's one thing is when you put something on the dog, it's going to constrict them, and their ability to work is going to diminish.
Oh, I see.
And especially with the heat that we have here, you put, you know, a 10-pound vest on him, he's going to wear out right away. So it's unfortunate that, you know, they can't wear a bulletproof vest, but it's going to limit their ability.
Yeah.
And in the end, you know, we have to realize, yes, even though they're a dog, they're our best friends, they're our partner, but at the end of the day, they're a tool, right? So one thing is, you know, they protect us. So it's better for us to send this dog in prior to us sending officers, even though, of course, the dog's life is, you know, is very, you know, what I would say very important. But at the end of the day, you know, police officers' lives is going to be, you know, held above his.
Yeah, like you have a family to go home to at the end
Yes,
of the
and
day.
you know, he's been through a lot of situations here where it's, you know, a lot of our dogs have got hurt in the line of duty.
I was gonna ask you, have a what?
Yes, you know, one previous was former K9 handler, he's now retired, he's a Cameron Zone. It's probably been, I would say, I think it was like 2014 time frame, and with his police service dog, and we were searching a commercial lot. There was a burglar that had broken into a tow yard, and he was breaking into cars. They had someone that lives on the property, saw him, so of course we had those felony charges. We began looking. Well, that day, that police service dog saved my life and the rest of the others, because he was able to locate where this guy was. He was hiding in a Connex box. Well, luckily for the dog, he was able to manage his way into the Connex box, which was slightly closed. Well, as soon as he went in, the suspect started shooting. So he was basically waiting for us to go ahead and open that Connex box. And of course, we would have been on the other side of the bullets. But because the dog went in there, one, the dog was able to bite him. And so for him, he shot the dog multiple times. So the dog was able to get recalled by the K9 officer, and he came out. He was shot multiple times. But at the same time, we made it into SWAT activation, and hours later we found out that he actually shot himself and killed himself. So when he was trying to shoot the dog, he actually killed himself. But in that time, I mean, without that dog, one, we would not be able to locate him. And then, of course, we would have been forced to open that Connex box. And me being the person that I was closest to the Connex box, it would have been me and another
You'd be
K9
gone,
officer.
yeah.
So, you know, that's where, you know, I truly believe that these dogs actually save our lives and save citizens' lives. For instance, my police service dog is the one that apprehended Devon Lyman. He's the one that killed Officer Daniel Webster.
Right.
So, I mean, these dogs are used very in dynamic situations, and of course, they protect us and also the citizens of Albuquerque. So.
Well, and that's the thing, I think they don't get enough credit, you know, because people don't know about them, and to the extent that they help, and, you know, and then they look at a dog and they think, oh, how cute. Yes, how cute, but he's an officer. You know what I mean? You know, what kind of language do you speak to him?
So with SJEF, he's Dutch, but the most common ones are Dutch, German, and then of course, check. So those are the most common ones that we actually do, just because all of our dogs are imported from Europe.
Now, when the Reavers get them, are they puppies? Or
So
are they...
they're so now with, of course, with 9/11 that happened, back in 9/11, so the demand actually went high for dogs. So when, before I came on, of course, we would, and also with chef, we would find dogs generally around the age of 4 or 5, a little more mature. But because the demand is so high, they're actually being sold some at 2 years old. It's hard to find a 4-year-old dog.
Wow.
Because what happens now is, of course, in Europe is they title the dogs, they put them through a sport training. And so right now they used to be titled, but now the demand is so high that they get the dogs, and it's so they get into the point where they're going to get titled, but they sell them right away because the demand is so high.
Wow.
So
What
it's
does title mean?
So a title is basically they perform. It's in obedience. So say KNPV, it is like a dog club that trains dogs. They actually do it here in the United States everywhere, and they train to get titled. It's a point system. They basically go through events, and the title, of course, is meaning that the dog is held at a distinguished.
Like it rates them.
Yes, rates them.
Mhm.
So with that, of course, in Europe, those get sold for more money. So, but now because the demand is so high, generally they're not able to keep that dog because, of course, police departments across Europe and across with us are trying to buy them. So now, it's a good and bad thing. A good thing is that you get a very young dog, right? And then you can mold that dog into what you want. But then also it takes a little bit more time when they come to our police department to get trained. Because you have to remember, now instead of getting a teenager, now you're maybe getting a younger dog, right before teenage. So that's where, we might have to have the dog trained and go through more environmental stuff rather than, a 4-year-old dog. So that's sort of the things that are plus and minus. But at the same time is you get to have that dog longer on the police department. And so, of course, a younger dog, once you get them up and trained, they're going to last longer and save a lot more money for the police department.
Are you saying it's harder to train a younger dog in some aspects than an
Well,
older?
with the younger dogs, you have to remember it's almost having, because they don't experience everything as far as a normal dog at the age. So I wouldn't say it's harder, but at times it might take longer in training, meaning that you might have to put them in a lot more environmental stuff than a 4-year-old dog or a dog that has 2 years older. He's more experienced, so that sort of thing. So I would say it's hard, it's more challenging, I would say, than the aspect of you have to be able to realize that it's a younger dog, have to be more patient,
Yeah.
and you have to be a lot more careful. So that would be, so I wouldn't say it's more difficult, but it's more of a patient thing.
Uh-huh.
So,
Because they're still like in their puppyhood too.
yes, yes,
And an older dog,
yes, then the dog, but, so.
Huh. That's so interesting. And then, do you train them, or I know you're involved in the training, but is there somebody else, like a trainer, that trains them to a certain point and then brings you the handler in?
No, so what happens is as soon as the handler goes to, the dog school, I help them select the dog, or another, that's generally, the sergeant, which I am, and then another officer that's a senior officer. We'll go out and we'll kind of train, test the dogs. And then when the handler gets him, he's going to be training with him every day. And then, of course, during the school, there's instructors out there. But when he comes back, the handler trains with him. However, I oversee a lot of the training.
Mm.
So weekly, we train weekly. So we have weekly training, but generally the handler is putting in a lot of the work. I'm just overall seeing the overall training aspect or curriculum of our police department.
And is that what you're doing now?
Yes,
Is that
as a
what you do?
supervisor, yes, that's.
And are you constantly training dogs, or is there, are you,
Yeah, so
how often do you get new dogs? What's the turnover?
So it just depends. So like right now, with our unit, I'm the only sergeant now. We used to have another sergeant, he transferred to a different unit. And then of course we have five handlers. So we're pretty much allotted anywhere from 10 to 12. But of course with the numbers in the police department, every specialized unit to include patrol officers are low manned.
Right.
So we're working on that. It just depends. So
Which is always the case, right? I mean, I've never seen law enforcement be full.
yes, unfortunately. So yeah. So it just depends. Like right now, I have 3 officers that have less than a year on, so they have all brand new dogs. But when I came on, there was 9 K9 handlers, and myself and another handler came in at the same time. But there was guys that had 9 years, 10 years, 12 years.
Wow.
And so it just kind of depends. The turnover now is I would say a little more frequent than it was in the past, just because the demand is so high.
Mhm.
You know, we're on call 24/7. And then of course, you know, other officers want to have a life outside.
Yeah.
It's pretty demanding to be on a tactical unit where you're on call 24/7, 365 days
I
a
mean,
week.
you guys get called out a lot. I mean, you always
Yes.
hear, you know, I only have the news to go by, but you hear a lot, you know, and SWAT got called out, SWAT got called out, you
And
know.
then we do everything, you know, with the K9s, we do every commercial building that's broken into.
Mhm.
And then if there's, you know, a suspect inside of a residence, we get called out for those. Anytime, you know, a perimeter where sometimes, you know, citizens get mad where we're blocking the streets or the neighborhood, but we're looking for a suspect that maybe hit someone's backyard.
Mhm.
So we get all those calls, and then of course the SWAT. So we're probably one of the most called out units within the department.
Oh,
So-
interesting.
So with that being said, the demand is high, and then of course, you know, so the turnover is quite high, higher than it usually is. And unfortunately, because guys get burnt out,
Yeah.
and of course sometimes.
It's demanding.
So yeah, it just, but that's across the country with
Yeah.
law enforcement.
I know, I was in a building before this a couple of years ago, and the door was wide open, and they had a K9 go in. I was grateful for that, because he went in, you know, and searched the perimeter, and I felt confident that there was nobody in there once the dog came out, you know.
Yeah, so.
So, I mean, they can smell things and.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, you know, their sensories,
Mhm.
and so they obviously smell a lot better. They
Mhm.
hear. Their eyesight's not as quite, you know, because they see 2-dimensional.
Oh, interesting.
But, you know, every other portion, you know, we use their nose and their hearing. And so that's why we use them, and we use them so they can create that time and distance, right? So they'll be able to find someone or locate human odor behind a door. Well, we are not gonna know that there's a suspect on the other side until we open that door. So this is quite a bit of the advantages that the police service dog does, is he's out in front of us, he locates them, and then of course he gives us that opportunity to plan to how to take this individual into custody, either by giving him more announcements saying that we located him to come out, or to eventually have to deploy him into a room or into an area where he has to apprehend them, which is biting, and then we take him into custody.
Well, and there's that element of surprise too that's good with the dogs, you know, is probably a lot of suspects are not thinking.
Well, a lot of the suspects, you know, when we tend to talk to them afterwards, a lot of them just don't think that the dogs are that good.
Mm-hmm.
But if someone's in a perimeter, most likely the dog, and I would say 99.9% of the time are gonna find them. Of course, there is that small percentage, but through my training experiences, if they're in there, they're gonna find them. Even if they're hiding on roofs, even if they can't get to them, they're gonna be able to indicate for us and tell us, hey, the suspect's on the roof or behind a shed or inside of a shed. So.
Yeah, which is helpful, and you know, saves your guys' lives, like you're saying, you know, which is important, for sure. What kind of, so not in your department, because it sounds like you're saying that theirs is apprehension, his assignment would be apprehension, but across, there's like bomb detection dogs,
Yes.
right? And what other kinds of
So
specialty?
it's well, there's a lot of, I would say, specialized units that use dogs. So of course there's the search and rescue dog, there's cadaver dogs,
Right,
and then there's also the detection work, where it's the narcotics, and then of course the explosive detection
Right.
stuff. And then of course a lot of hospitals are using dogs for medical stuff that they're coming out
Mhm.
with. So dogs are being used quite a bit for different aspects in our everyday life, just not police department. But the police department their lines are detection work. Even on the police department now, there's therapy dogs, right? For a lot of the victims. So, our department uses different type of dogs, but it's a different breed. So a lot of times with detection work, you might not have this Malinois. You might use a lab, that sort of thing. So it just
depending
depends.
on the purpose.
But depending on the purpose.
I know AFR has a dog.
It's an arson dog.
It's expensive, yeah.
Yes.
Well, there's an arson dog, but there's also like a therapy dog.
Yeah, and so, so I mean, there's a lot of things that, because generally, when you're around the dog, it makes you feel good, so.
Yeah, well, does he have any other health complications besides his spine, the arthritis?
No, other than that, I mean, he's pretty healthy. He's lost some weight, of course, lost some muscle mass, but that's because of the age and stuff. But
Yeah.
overall, he had a checkup right before he retired, so.
Is that pretty old for a Malinois?
So, yeah, so their life expectancy is anywhere from 12 to 15 tops. So yes, like my other police service dog that retired, he lived till he was about a little over 12 years old, and then of course he got cancer and everything like that.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, 12 is, anything older than that here, it's good. So that he's living past that.
Yeah, for sure. What do you like about being a K9 officer when you have been? I mean, you're a sergeant now, but,
So, I mean, I think,
because you've been doing it a long time.
yeah, so I mean, the line of work, just being a police officer, I mean, I wanted to be a police officer since I was very little. But the line of police work with the police service dog, what interests me is the bond between you and the dog, and then also, you're kind of the last resort, to find someone.
Yeah, if they call you,
Yeah,
it's
so
serious business.
and then it's that, it's using your dog, using all the training that you've had done in order to find the suspect that's hiding from detection from officers. So that's the kind of thing that really inspires me to continue my work, even as a sergeant, is one, the training, is seeing that dog, perform to a level that you want him to perform. And then of course is, when he is put out there, is to find that individual, and in the end of the day is to save the lives of the officers that he's around. So I think that's the key thing that keeps me going, is just the overall aspects of working with a dog and constantly training the younger officers and the younger dogs to see them successful when we need them. Because of course any sort of success, meaning we locate somebody, is a success to all the officers on a K9, because we're all helping the training, right? We're the ones that are hiding in the bite suit. We're the ones that are hiding. So it's all a group effort in training.
Well, and that's something I've always admired about you guys, is the tight knit, like you guys are a family, and that's amazing, truly, to see that. I have friends that are in law enforcement and family, just to see that is always, I don't know, it's like no other, like you guys are like a family. It doesn't matter if you travel to another state, you're still treated like that, it doesn't matter. And I think
Yeah, and
that's-
it's one of those things that, just like the military, it takes a special type of person
Yes.
to do that, to risk your life for your community or for your country. So I'm very big on it. I have 3 brothers, they're all police officers
Wow.
here. So, I mean, I really, and I've always wanted to be a police officer.
What made you want to be when you were a kid?
You know, it's I would say when I was very young, I saw this officer. You know, I lived in Oakland, probably not the best area,
Sure.
but, and I saw this officer and I thought he was a superhero, you know? So he came up, had the opportunity to come around and check up on me and say hi, kind of that little community police stuff, right? At a young age, I was like, wow, you know, I want to be that guy.
Made an impression on you.
Yeah, and so, you know, that's one thing that I know that our department's pushing, and I really do believe in that. Like going out, reaching to the young children out there, you know, making known that, hey, we're presentable, we're just
Yeah, I mean, playing basketball with someone or, you know, I mean, just.
Because I'm true, because that actually happened to me. So I know that that interaction, when I think I was like 5 or 6 years old, put a big impression on me, and that's what I wanted to be. And so me and my older brother, we always wanted to be police officers since we were very young. And then, of course, my 2 younger brothers followed. But that's a big impression that us as police officers can make to the community. And all it does, it just takes just a little bit of time. So I do truly believe in that community policing aspect and reaching out to those kids, because the kids are our future.
Yes.
So, you know, I have a son now that I know he's going to be a cop. You know, one, he has, you know, 3 uncles that are police officers. His grandfather's a police officer. So
it's all around him.
yes, and you know, his mom's a probation officer. So, and you know, sometimes it worries me, but at the end of the day, is, you know, I think he's our future. So if my son wants to be a cop or a police officer, I'm going to support him.
Yeah, I'm glad he wants to be, because a lot of people, you know, I've talked to a lot of cops that are wanting to bail because of, you know, just the intensity and all the hatred and the, you know, which elevates the danger even more so. And I'm like, please don't leave, you know, like we need you guys so bad, you know?
Yes, and we're at times right now as a society, we're in a difficult spot as police officers. But, you know, here in Albuquerque, I see it all the time, is support, which is good. It's uplifting. Good. You know, I go to, you know, a restaurant and have someone come up to us, or even say, hey, I bought your lunch.
Yeah.
Or, you know, at Starbucks, someone will come up to me and thank me for my support. And so we do see it in the community here. You know, they're very pro.
But you know, I'm glad to hear that. Last year, I had to go to court on a rental thing. I was a landlord, and 2 cops were in the parking lot talking, and every time I'm out, I always tell you guys thank you. Like,
I appreciate that.
Yeah, and so I walked up to the car and they were like, what did we do? They were like kind of freaked out, and I said, you didn't do anything. Like, I'm just coming to tell you thank you for your service. But I think just that paranoia, like you guys are under the microphone constantly, you know, and it's tough. It's a different day and age for sure, you know. And then you could see them, they were relaxed, and they're like, oh, okay, thank you so much, you know. But they didn't know if I was gonna complain and to them, you know, or what, you know.
Yes.
But it's good to hear. So Albuquerque, you're thinking, is not like other parts of the country where there's
I mean, there's your selected few, you know, but the majority of Albuquerque are pro-law, at least pro-law enforcement, for what, you know, my interactions with. You know, there is always that selective few, and there's that selective few that will never be able to change.
Yeah, for sure.
Their outlook on us, or their, you know, thought process for us. And you know, we'll keep doing our work, and hopefully eventually it can come around. But I think a majority of us, or a majority of the citizens of Albuquerque, support law enforcement, which is good, or first responders.
Yeah, that's great.
So
it is. It's so important, you know. I mean, because as things like with the qualified immunity, that's what has made a lot of the officers I've talked to are like, if that happens, I'm out of here.
Yes,
that's
so
tough.
I mean that's tough. I mean, luckily it worked out where, you know, it's still going to be, you know, the department, you know, defending us. But you know, whenever you put these officers where now they can get sued personally.
Yes.
I mean that scares a lot of officers. You know, so with ours, it's, you know, luckily when it passed, and my understanding of it is, you know, the departments will still, I mean, we'll get sued, but the department will still be, you know, supporting us.
Now, and do you have that in writing from them, or how does that get conveyed?
So it's through, I think it's the House Bill 4.
Uh-huh.
So reading through the House Bill 4, initially I think the changes that they did want is that they wanted a certain percentage that they could sue the actual officer.
Mm-hmm.
And from my understanding and what our police union put out is, it's pretty similar to what it was before.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing is now, they put it in pretty much writing where, you know, they have 2 years from the date, to sue, but the department is gonna basically, financially, gonna be able to support us.
That's good. I
Yes.
should get an update on that, cause I kinda lost track, you know?
Yeah, so
because
there's a
they
lot
were-
of things that rumors and a lot of other stuff that were kind of, you know, thrown out there, you know,
Mhm.
and a lot of it's, you know, scare police officers where, you know, that if qualified immunity wasn't passed, then they would have to be able to, they're gonna have to pay for all the
Yeah.
court fees and all that stuff or get sued. And so that's, and of course, other states, laws are being passed like that.
Mhm.
Good thing that ours was kind of changed to what it normally was.
Well, and a lot of people are so naive. I even have friends that are like, you know, police reform, like that just means redistributing money, and I'm like, you don't understand. You know, like, I remember telling a friend of mine, I'm like, you better get a gun. She's 70. I'm like, you better get a gun and learn how to shoot it, because if things keep progressing in the way that they are, that's what you're going to be looking at. So when you think that it's just about redistributing money for all law enforcement agencies are already hurting financially,
Yes.
and they're down men, you know, and I said, so you better learn about that aspect before you go supporting this kind of legislation, because you have no idea what the repercussion of that is going to be.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you know, that's unfortunate. You know, luckily for us here in the city of Albuquerque, as far as that, we haven't been financially hurt
Yeah.
by a lot, like the major departments, New York, you know, LA. I mean, they're getting a lot of money taken away from them. Luckily for us.
And Minneapolis, because that's
Yes.
where, you know, what kind of started all of that.
Yeah, so I mean, for us, we've been fortunate where we haven't been hit too much by the books. So I haven't heard of anything of them taking money away from us or training wise. So that's one good part about, you know, the city of Albuquerque, at least in
Yeah.
the state of
It
Mexico.
seems like here, yeah, we're kind of sheltered from a lot of that extreme stuff, you know, which is good. What do you like about being an officer?
I think overall it's just and I know it's kind of cheesy to say, but why we come into the line of work is to help people, right? And to keep our community safe.
Mhm.
That's really, like, we know as officers, we're not gonna be millionaires.
I
You
know.
We're not gonna be rich or anything like that. So I think it's just the overall of satisfaction of going out every day and possibly changing someone's life. So I think that's what, you know, motivates me to continue being a police officer. And like I said before, it's, you know, it takes that special person to do it.
It does, I mean, I couldn't do it ever.
Because you
you
gotta
know, it's
realize
tough.
that police officers, every time they have an interaction with a citizen, it's, most of the time, they're even, the citizens being a victim of a crime. And it's, so you're going out and interacting with people at probably the lowest points of their life.
Yeah, I used to see people on their worst day.
Yes, so, you know, and that's a big thing that sometimes citizens don't realize is there's not a lot of many interactions as a police officer that you're going in there and having a positive, like you're not going to a domestic violence call and expecting it to be, you know, warm and fuzzy roses. You know, you're going in there and it's a dynamic situation for that entire family. So that is the hard part, is, you know, not knowing that, you know, unless you're a police officer or have, you know, police officers or being able to talk to their experiences. Every call for service, any interaction is we're behind the power curve of, and then of course, we're usually having to react and de-escalate and.
In seconds, I went through your firearms training simulator, and I mean, I never realized, like, you have a second, and the one that I chose was one with the motorcycle, so until then, I never knew that a knife can penetrate Kevlar?
Yes,
Kevlar?
yes.
Kevlar?
Yeah.
I learned that then, and I was like, oh my God, are you kidding?
Yes.
And you have like seconds, and the public doesn't have any clue about that. It's like, you think that they have all kinds of time to think about what they're gonna do to
Yes.
save your life? It's seconds.
Yes,
you know?
yeah, it usually is, and, you know, all we can do as police officers and even citizens of, you know, of this country is continue to try to educate those
Yes.
that don't know, and hopefully those that do want to get educated have an open mind too. Because a lot of times they don't know. You know, a lot of times you hear that thing of, why don't they just shoot them in the arm? Or, you know, this or that is, it's
like,
impossible.
if they shoot, it's gonna be shoot to kill, because there's.
It's just,
that
basically
one-
it's to stop their actions,
Yeah.
but yes, to stop their actions and to have centerments. Because you have to remember, high stress, yes, while an officer is shooting, you know, at the range, there's not that much stress to it.
Mhm.
But when you put him in high stress, the likelihood that he's gonna possibly miss goes higher. I think the average national a couple years ago was like anywhere from 40 to 50% of the rounds that actually, you know, strike a suspect. You know, while you go to any sort of police department, the minimum requirements is 80%. On an actual, like for us, it's 90%. So on high stress, now you're telling that person to shoot a limb or something, a smaller target area, it's not gonna happen. The likelihood of them missing and possibly hitting someone else behind them or someone is higher, so. But, of course, we try to continue to
Well,
educate.
the public doesn't realize too, like, you don't wanna discharge your firearm because of all the BS that happens after that.
Well, we, as
You know,
cops,
I
we
mean-
never,
It's like, cause you know, some public will say, well, they're just trigger happy. No, that is the last thing you guys want to have to do, because you then are accountable, you know, and everything that happens after that, the investigation and
Yes.
all of that.
yeah, I don't think there's one, you know, any police officer that goes out and says, you know, I wanna take someone's life. He just doesn't, even in the military. You know, when I was in the military, we don't think that way. As
Mhm.
police officers, we don't think that way. It just unfortunately a lot.
Now, you have to be willing to.
Yes, we have to be willing
Yeah.
to, but a lot of the characteristics is, you know, is where we take out the human side of us,
Yeah,
you know, and they just see the badge,
yeah.
and that's it, so.
Well, you'll hear, or I've heard a lot too of, well, they're just all egotistical assholes. And I'm like, you know what? They need that ego, because even on a traffic stop, which is
Yeah, I
one of the
would-
highest fatality.
I would say it's confidence, you know, you have to.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know.
It's command
there's that.
presence, but I wouldn't, so it's one of the traits that you do need as a police officer.
You have
is
to.
command presence.
I mean, you have to be able to, and I've had friends that I've known before they became cops, and then after, and it changes you. I mean, there's,
yes.
you know, there's no doubt, like,
Yes.
I mean, it's, yeah. But I'm thinking about one friend in particular, like, I didn't think she was going to be able to be a cop because she used to be very afraid, and, I mean, and now she's totally different, you
Mhm.
know? But in a good way, I mean, it's not good or bad, you know, she's just can handle herself, you know?
Yes,
I mean, you have to.
yes, yeah.
But, well, thank you so much for coming, and, we even, you know, in case you know, I mean, how do you do, well, before you leave, like, how do you deal with the stress of being a cop? And what do you find stressful?
You know, it's hard, you know, I try not to think about stress, you know, because a lot of the
Like,
dynamic,
that's how I deal with it, I don't think that.
you know, what I deal with, stress is physical activity. You know, I go to the gym or I do something active, because me and my wife joke about it, but that's my therapy. Is going to the gym every day. But as far as stress is, you know, being in a tactical environment, you really become numb to those high stress. You know, I've been in a lot of situations, dynamic situations, and kind of just don't think that You know, it's kind of weird to say, you don't think of the dangers that you're going into.
Yeah.
So to me, it's not thinking about it, just doing what, you know, my training tells me to do. Generally just rely on my training. At the day's end, usually I come out and make the right decisions, and the safest thing is to go home every day.
Yeah.
But as far as, you know, thinking about stresses, I don't think
Well, you may not think about it. You know, I had a firefighter one time tell me, "What do you want me to do? Crawl into a fetal position and fail?" You know, and I'm like, "No, I'm not saying that." But like, you know, we see a lot of first responders here who, you know, get to a point. I mean, because no first responder is going to make a call for counseling easily. That is not easy. So
Yeah.
like, we will call somebody back within like an hour or two at the most because it's a hard call to make. You know?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is, you know, talking to either your significant other or to a brother. You know, so I think it's the communication part. Yes, it's hard for, you know, we do have specialist therapists, you know, in the department. You know, part of the tactical unit is we have to see them every year. It's a requirement just because of the high stress stuff that we do. And that, yeah, it's a tendency, you know, not to talk, but, you know, I tell the officers under me that work around me is you gotta be able to talk, you gotta be able to communicate. The biggest thing is, you know, for me, you know, and having a marriage, you know, going on 14 years is communicating. It's also not taking the job home.
Yeah.
You know, I think, you know, when I tell myself every day, as soon as I pull up to the driveway, I leave, you know, whatever happened at work or whatever away. And then I try to go into, yes, some days it's going to carry
Harder.
over, but if you keep telling yourself, like, you know, once you're at home, decompress, you know, talk to your kids and have fun. Then of course, you know, on the way to a call out is you have your game face on and then as soon as you pull back to the driveway,
That's a lot of switching gears emotionally.
Yes. But I think over time, the more experience that you get, it comes natural. So
Yeah.
my mom worries all the time for us, you know, having
Oh, yeah.
four sons that are police officers.
Oh my
And
gosh,
we just,
poor
we
her.
just, we just tell them that, and my dad, of course, he gets worried too, but at the day's end is we have to rely on the person next to us, which is the other police officer, and then of course our training. And at the day's end,
That's the best you can do. Now, and your family lives in California?
no, they all live here.
Oh,
They
they
all
do?
moved down
Oh,
here.
nice,
So
yeah.
one by
Well,
one.
because
they
all of
found
you
me.
are here, your brothers are all
Yes, so-
officers here?
Yeah, so when I became a police officer, my older brother, who's two years older than me, about 2 years after I joined, he came down, and then my two younger brothers joined as soon as they were 21. And then of course my parents moved down here. So, because we're tight-knit family, so,
That helps too,
yes.
for sure. No girls, no daughters?
I have a daughter, yes.
No, but you don't have sisters?
No sisters, no, all four boys, so.
For your mom, you know,
Yes.
in terms of, I mean, because she probably does really worry about you guys.
Yeah, but you know, she's a strong woman,
Yeah.
so she's got good foundation with my dad, and you know, they're both strong people. They raised us right, so.
At some point, you have to just, you know, do a lot of praying and send you off to your shift, and,
Yeah.
you know, that's all you can do, really.
Yeah, that's all we can do. Can't think too much about it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for
Well,
coming.
thank you for the opportunity. So, like I said, I appreciate, you know, you reaching out, and then also your podcast that's pro law enforcement, and you know, that allows us to kind of come in and talk, and you know, hopefully the listeners just see us as, yes, we're first responders, but we're also just like any normal.
Yeah, like humanize the badge, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
For sure.
Yes.